Hello. Hello.
Trump Trump was sending COVID tests to Putin, and Putin said, "Don't let anyone know." I mean, this is what is going on? What do you make of that?
So I actually said it even in the debate. I believe that Donald Trump has this desire to be a dictator. He admires strong men and he gets played by them because he thinks that they're his friends
Yeah,
and they are manipulating him full time and manipulating him by flattery
yeah.
and with favor. And so, in the midst, to your point, as reported by Bob Woodward, in the height of the pandemic, and remember, and your listeners will remember, people were dying by the hundreds.
Yeah.
Everybody was scrambling to get these kits, the tests, the COVID test kits.
You couldn't get him.
Couldn't get them.
Right,
Couldn't get them anywhere.
right.
And this guy who is president of the United States is sending them to Russia, to a murderous dictator for his personal use?
Trump was sending COVID tests to Putin, and
First and
Putin's
foremost, well, welcome to Let Me Know News. But first and foremost, gotta give a lot of credit to the vice president simply for sitting down with Howard Stern. Listen, I've been on the Howard Stern show before. Um, but I wasn't running for president. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it is not. People say she doesn't do these sit down interviews. She does the softball stuff, if anything, or whatever. Howard Stern is no softball. I mean, he comes off the wall with stuff. I mean, and he's a smart man, and he's also one that loves controversy, loves to put somebody on the hot seat, to embarrass them. Um, Particularly, I mean, he loves talking about sexual things, which apparently didn't come up in that interview with the vice president. And if it's not him, it's his sidekick a lot of times, the black woman, Robin. Um, but he generally comes at you in a weird way, and the fact that she decided to sit down with him, it says a lot, when they say, "Oh, she's not doing this, she's not doing that." What she's not doing is the black press. I will not let her off the hook for that. But she did sit down with Howard Stern. You say, "Oh, she sat with black people." It's not the black press. Yeah, I know. I always continue to make sure y'all understand there's a big difference between black folks who work for white media and black press of America. Look, we got a couple of white folks in the black press of America's family. I mean, one of Denise Rolock's best reporters over the past couple of years was a white girl um, at the Washington Informer. So and we love her. So sit down with Kayla. Let the vice president sit down with her. If you're more comfortable looking at whiteness, I mean, it would still be the black press. That's all I'm saying. But I didn't intend to criticize the vice president. I thought she did an amazing job with Howard Stern. We're going to talk more about that later. There's a couple of things before I get to the serious part. My brain works in a way I got to talk about other things first. Um, but first, I'm going to lift up David Youngblood comment when we will call the treasonous traitor a treasonous traitor. She did. The ORNG says, hold her accountable. VP is not above criticism. Exactly. Good morning, Aunt Pam. Aunt Pam bought my book yesterday. She posed with a picture of it. Unbelievable. The transatlantic slave trade is out, 500-year legacy. Um, check it out. You guys did respond yesterday. Really appreciate that. Um, I saw Chuck out at the AMAs, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him. But I would love to thank him again doing the forward and representing us on the Transatlantic Slave Trade book, 500 Years. Pick it up, Amazon.com. Be like Aunt Pam. She says she always going to support. Aunt Pam has the most precious daughter. I'm telling you. I love my girls. They're extremely precious, but Aunt Pam definitely has one of the most precious daughters. I was so glad to see her a couple months. But it's been a couple months already. It was in August. See my little cuz. She is just the most precious thing, and still looks the same all these years later. She's like 30 years old and looks like she's like 10. That's my girl, Tiara. Oh man, love that girl. Like she was my own daughter. Um, it- and speaking of books, so I mean, if you watch this program at all, I always loved Lisa Marie Presley. Always thought highly of her. Always knew she was crazy. But she has a book um that came out. She died um was it earlier this year when she died? Yeah. And her daughter, Riley Keough, finished her book for her. So I don't know what part is Lisa's and what's part is Riley's. But Riley says she picked up the where her mother left off, and a couple of notes in the book. One is that she talks about when she got together with Michael Jackson. Um, Now she was 25 and Michael was 35. She was still married at the time, and her and Michael got together in Vegas, and Michael confessed his love for her, and she's like, "Oh, well, quite frankly, I feel the same," and she went and filed for divorce, and then she married Michael Jackson. But the revelation was that, according to her, um, at 35 years old, Michael confessed to her that he was a virgin. He had not had sexual relations with anyone else, and so she was his first. and uh, and so why is that even interesting? Because at 35 years old, folks, you got to give Michael props, I guess, for holding out until he was married. I mean, he's a rock star, and women throw themselves, and men throw themselves at rock stars. And he was the biggest star there was. She talked about how the thing with Brooke Shields, which we all knew was just performative. They were friends. She said at most he kissed Brooke Shields at most. She talked about that infamous or famous night at the Oscars when Madonna tried to seduce Michael Jackson. Now, this is where, and again, I guess you got to give the man props, but I'm telling you what, at that point in time, this is only what that Oscars was only a few years, like 4 years, let's say 4 years before he and Lisa Marie got together. So he was like 31 years old. My 31-year-old self with Madonna, the seduction would have been the other way around. I mean, come on. All the guys, Tupac I mean, everybody was with Madonna. Maybe that's what turned Michael off. I don't know. But but you know what? It says a lot. The man had some integrity. He had integrity. Um, but the other part of Lisa, the other thing that will blow you away if you have not heard about this. So, if you know anything about Lisa Marie and Elvis and in the family, Lisa Marie's son Benjamin, a few years back, committed suicide. Unfortunate, and she was devastated, of course, as any parent would be. However, she was so devastated, she decided not to bury him. She kept Benjamin in the house for 2 months, according to Riley. And it was so morbid. Even Riley was saying how morbid it was. She says, but the realization finally came when she wanted to get a tattoo of Benjamin. And the tattoo artist came to the house. And he says, well, do you have a picture or something? She says, "Well, I'll do you one better." She took him to the body. Tattoo artist freaked out, and of course, that was Riley writes that that was the end of the end. That they had to find a resting place for Benjamin. But Lisa's thought was, well, in California, there's no law as to how long you have to wait to bury someone. Ultimately, of course, we know Lisa Marie passed away, and they buried Benjamin at Graceland and Lisa Marie right next to him at Graceland. But really, really interesting, weird stuff. But it also shows you. I call it weird, and some people might get upset to use that phrase, but obviously there was some mental health issues there. Obviously, um, to keep her son in the house dead for 2 months, um, she was struggling with a lot of things, and the biggest thing, struggling with being the only child of the king of rock and roll. And she there was a lot. I mean, Elvis was big when he was alive, yes, but he was so much bigger in death. His the whole aura, everything became so much bigger, larger than when he was alive. And so the pressures of being Elvis's, everything was about Elvis's daughter. I remember speaking with Lisa Marie, and I remember her expressing that, you know, she had just performed, and she came off stage and we were talking. She was, man, this is, I know people are going to talk about Elvis. Elvis. She didn't say dad. She said Elvis. I know people, but she says, I want my own identity. And it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for someone in that situation. But she had some surgery a couple of years back, um, and that surgery wasn't cosmetic. It was something she needed, but it life wasn't to be life threatening. And then a couple of years later, an obstruction came up, and that's what killed her ultimately, unfortunately. Um, but interesting story. So we start with how real news now with how MAGA Republicans continue to put politics and Donald Trump over the lives of even the people who support them. In September, Hurricane Helene devastated the southeast portion of the United States, wiping out entire communities and killing hundreds of people. The Biden Harris administration has continued to provide the most aid possible under federal guidance to people affected. But they've called on Congress to approve even more funding for recovery efforts. Now, Congress has to do this. Good morning, Big Sis. Congress has to do this. The president cannot. He's done everything. That administration, Biden Harris, has done everything that they possibly could do under the sun and within the legal limits. So, in a letter to Congress, the president asked the MAGA Republican controlled Congress to release funds immediately for the Small Business Administration's Disaster Loan Program, FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund, HUD, and the Transportation Department, all of which are vital in the recovery and the lives of millions. But MAGA Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said no. Congress is currently in recess, and MAGA Mike says, and he, of course, he's the speaker, so he has the power to order them back in session or the power to say no. Well, he says he won't convene until after the election, which means that there will be no additional funds to all of these victims um, and no additional help to the communities. And the election, of course, is not until next month. We have almost 30 days. I mean, a little less than 30 days, I should say. But every day, every minute counts for these folks. And you're telling them that they got to wait at least 30. And that is really to help, in their view, this is going to help Donald Trump. Letting people die, even their supporters, letting their supporters die and let them suffer, they believe is going to help Donald Trump. What kind of world do you want to live in, MAGA folks, where you're just sacrificial lambs? For the it's not for the greater good, it's for the good of one person. And so MAGA Mike, Trump, and these other cold-hearted, inhumane MAGA Republicans, what they're doing is spreading false statements and outright lies about why FEMA is running out of money for hurricane relief. They've accused the Biden administration of using the funds to support undocumented immigrants. Well, here are the facts. And I love that post. Greer sent me a post that had some facts in it. Less than 3% of FEMA's annual budget goes towards supporting immigrants. This is part of FEMA's shelter and service program. None, absolutely none of that money comes from FEMA's disaster relief fund. And this is what the president wants to be funded even more. This is extremely separate stream of funding, and it's used for hurricanes and other disasters. The reality is that natural disasters are getting more frequent. It's biblical. They told you in the Bible it was going to get more frequent and more intense. And FEMA needs more funding to keep up. By mid last month, the U.S. had already experienced 64 disasters this year. 64, costing $53 billion in total. Now, check this out. Hurricane Helene's damages, and we haven't even gotten to Milton yet, right? Hurricane Helene's damages alone are expected to cost as much as $250 billion. And now, of course, Milton has landed, and MAGA Republicans, somehow hoping this will score more points, get more votes next month, are sitting on their hands as millions lose their homes, livelihoods, and many lives are being lost just because they want to spread more lies and get the chief MAGA back in office. This is the most egregious act in the history of the country as far as politics are concerned, as far as people's lives are concerned, outside of how they've treated black folks. Mike V says they are holding the victims hostage through obstruction. They are killing people. The blood of these people are on their hands, but they don't care. Power 96, RNG says the rural voters in the hard hit areas will place the blame on the black woman. Those voters are the poorly educated people that Donald loves. That's what they're hoping for. But, folks, this Biden Harris administration has provided every cent possible. And they simply want Congress to add on to stop the bleeding, as it were. More than 80 organizations have urged Congress in a letter yesterday to return from its pre-election recess to pass a supplemental package replenishing funding for FEMA. Um, it is devastating, and it's so um, ignorant. See, they look up the N word. We're not going to use the word. Greer has forbidden the word be used, and I agree. But look up the N word in the dictionary. That word is used so freely and among many times amongst the wrong people. These folks are the definition of the N word: ignorance. That's why I wish black folks would, if they're going to use it that the right way. But as they say in the letter, since the storm moved through the region, our communities have come together to clear fallen trees, supply drinking water, and coordinate airdrops of supplies to areas that are no longer accessible by road. However, our community resources can only extend so far. This is devastating, and it's so triggering. It makes you angry. You have to be angry at this. Folks, you have to be angry at this. If you have 1 ounce, 1 modicum of humanity in your bones, you have to be really angry at Donald Trump and Mike Johnson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Lauren Boebert, and Byron Donalds, and Tim Scott, and all of those guys. You have to be. You have to be. Billy Bob down south. What's his name? The Republican who always supports Trump no matter what, but uh, they all Billy Bobs. Goodness grief. This is absolutely this is egregious on other levels that we have never seen before. And they want to talk about the idiots want to say uh, the vice president ain't black. First of all, she is, but as if that meant anything. Look at the other side. Look what they're doing. Your life does not mean a thing to them. Oh boy. Sam P.K. Collins wrote a great story yesterday um, in the Washington Informer. Um, he just continues to shine, and there's no letting up in his work. He teaches as well, but his uh, journalism skills have just been off the charts. And it's like he's come into his own some time ago. And the guy, you got to read when Sam PK Collins, and he has this daily thing now too to go along with his regular duties called the Collins Report, Collins Council Report, where he reports on DC Council. But his work is, I mean, it's reaching Pulitzer material, if not already there. But this story on DC's homeless students, or not necessarily homeless, but either homeless or experiencing some form of housing security, including stints at a local shelter or doubling up with other family members. Um, he says that with less than a half a year half of the school year completed, DC public schools have already received notifications from 2,600 public school students experiencing those things, housing insecurity, including stints at a local shelter or doubling up with other family members. Some school leaders he mentions, like Nakia Harrod, said they expect the numbers of self-reporting families to increase in the coming weeks and months, especially as she and other district public school connected schools managers help families overcome fear of DC Child and Family Services Agency involvement. See, folks don't want, particularly unhoused, Mike. Thank you. Um, uh, Folks don't want Child Protective Services involved for great reasons, especially folks of color. And the wards in DC where these students are experiencing comes from uh, m- mostly the wards that have people of color, that contain many people of color. He says that DCPS Connected Schools, a program that has turned public schools into community resource hubs since 2019, has a presence in 20 district public schools, including several within the Anacostia High School and Ballou High School feeder patterns. He says this is thanks to a combination of local dollars and grant funding from the U.S. Department of Education. So wards 4, 7, and 8 currently account for the most housing insecure families in the public school system. The story goes on to talk about the fiscal year budget and the fighting that is going on with that budget, and that has gone on with that budget. And I mean, Sam really breaks down so much here, but it's a reminder of what students, particularly students of color, some of the barriers that they face, even just to get a K to 12 education. We're not even talking about a higher education. And this battle goes on between council and the mayor, and caught in the crossfires, of course, are the families. So they argue over budget and increases, um, and the homelessness throughout the district is pretty high. The rate. In fact, Sam writes, by May, when budget season had been well underway, DC Department of Human Services estimated that 2,200 families were exiting the rapid rehousing program. This was around the time of an annual point in time count conducted by the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness that recorded a 40% increase in homelessness among district families. 40% increase. And these are families. These are uh, folks trying to make it, trying to get their kids through school so that they will have a shot, an opportunity at a better life. And folks love to play politics, as we were saying, with the MAGA folks, with the lives of real people. But it's just a great read by Sam P.K. Collins. I really strongly advise folks to check it out, because what he's reporting there with the DC schools and the students there, it's not just germane to DC. It is throughout the nation. I mean, you ask Karen Bass in Los Angeles what she's going through out there. Um, I mean, you go out to San Francisco, and um, my wife was just saying when she and her girlfriend was out in San Francisco um, last year, the homelessness was just every she was just pretty much stuck to one little area in San Francisco. And San Francisco used to be this bustling place, right? With all the technology and stuff. But Houston, you go, of course, New York, you get off Penn Station, and you're going to encounter nothing but homelessness. Those who are unhoused might be. But check out Sam's article. It's a great article. It's a great read, and it's part of a series apparently. So check it out. In Florida, officials are telling residents who don't intend to evacuate from the areas expected to be hit hardest by Hurricane Milton to write their names and the phone number of a family member on themselves so their bodies can be identified and their families find out about their deaths. That is incredible. As preparations continue for Hurricane Milton's arrival, Florida's Department of Corrections said it has moved 4,636 inmates, with additional evacuations still underway. Evacuation determinations are made in the best interest of the public, staff, and inmate safety, according to an update on the department's website. Officials said announcements about evacuations will only be made after they are complete. Down the road in Tampa, the mayor told folks they had two choices: either leave or die. And then over in Disney, Orlando, they couldn't, the Disney folks couldn't seem to make up their minds about closing, and some employees began tweeting about the cruelty of Disney, saying that they're telling their workers, well, let's wait it out and see what happens. That is the all-time greed. Meanwhile, Universal Studios in Orlando, next door to Disney, already said we closed. We are not taking any chances. Universal Studios Florida, Islands of Adventure, and Universal City Walk plan to reopen after the storm. Um, the Universal Volcano Bay is going to be closed at least for the next couple of nights. And meanwhile, gas stations in Florida are struggling to keep up with drastically increasing demand. Apparently, a number of gas stations are already out of fuel, and truckers and everybody else can't get gas. Um, Folks are saying, just hang in there. President Biden has put off, he's canceled really his overseas trip to, he was going to Germany and Africa because of the hurricane. He wants to be stateside as this disaster unfolds. It was actually, yeah, Berlin and then Angola. And this would have been Biden's first trip to Africa as president. But this Hurricane Milton is really bearing down on Florida. So our the NMPA's photographer, Mark Mahoney's asking for prayers for his family down there. Um, I have an uncle in Florida and some friends in Florida. So, we will be vigilantly, gosh, you know what I'm trying to say, watching what goes on down there, and um, checking out the safety of our loved ones as well. But everyone, really, you gotta, if you're in the eye of this storm, and I mean, even if you just have a couple of bucks, get out of there. You have the mayor saying two options, the mayor of Tampa, leave or die. You got health officials, emergency officials saying, if you're going to stay, write your name and the phone numbers of a contact person on your bodies so that they can identify your body. I mean, that is more than enough for me. I mean, you got a heads up on this thing. It hasn't it hasn't slammed you yet. You've had a few days heads up, and plus in the wake of Helene, I mean, it might be something where you just gotta just get to walking at least. I mean, some do something. Get on Amtrak. Tell them you pay them later. I mean, something. You got to get out of there, folks. It's not worth it. And I know there's some folks, and I know Power 96 can speak to this with Katrina, who just they're so in love with their property and with things. They want to stay there to somehow uh, protect their property or somehow um, be there to witness their property. I don't know, but you got to go. When Harris said you got to go, you got to go. You got to go, or you will be gone. But folks, this storm is no joke. And once again, um, just think about this. You're not getting help from the federal government because of Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. You're not getting any extra help. Mike says Helene and Milton will create so many climate refugees. See, and this is like I said, you're not getting any help, and this is where folks need to learn how government works, especially black celebrities who tweet stupid things, blaming the administration. Yeah, what was those people thinking? But Congress controls this stuff. Look at this. I mean, look at these sites.
James, you all right, bro?
Wow. Yeah. They're trapped in their home due to Hurricane Helene. And people record everything, number one. I don't know that I'd be recording right now. It's one of those things that but I don't know that I would be there. And those people don't look like they're they would be short on resources to have gotten out. Michelle Madison said, after living in Florida for years, I would definitely evacuate immediately. My family's lives are more important than a house. And the other problem you face there, now see now they're covered with water, the alligators and stuff. And they were showing pictures of where they're popping up at. They listen, Florida is no joke. Florida is like it's the wild. Like, you see alligators walking through people's lawns and stuff and on regular days. There's no reason to be in there. Wow. A bipartisan group of 14 attorneys general from across the country have filed lawsuits yesterday against TikTok, alleging that the platform has addicted young people and harmed their mental health. The lawsuit takes issue with various elements of the TikTok platform, including its endlessly scrolling feed of content. TikTok challenge videos that sometimes encourage users to engage in risky behavior, and late night push notifications that the attorneys general claim can disrupt kids' sleep. The lawsuits were each filed separately by members of the coalition, co-led by New York Attorney General Letitia James and California Attorney General Rob Bonta. They mark just the latest legal pressure facing TikTok, which is also battling a law that could see it banned in the United States as soon as 2025. And then there's a U.S. Department of Justice lawsuit against TikTok, which alleges that TikTok unlawfully collected children's data and several state actions. So they want TikTok out. Not they want it gone. TikTok in a statement, their spokesperson Alex Hurek said, "We're proud of and remain deeply committed to the work we've done to protect teens, and we will continue to update and improve our product. We provide robust safeguards, proactively remove suspected underage users, and have voluntarily launched safety features." I don't think it's going to be enough, dude. Uh, I mean, it's a bipartisan effort to shut you down, and that means that it's probably going to happen. And it's really because, let's face it, I mean, one of the reasons that they're going to be successful, at least I believe, is because it's a Chinese-based company, and I just believe that there's this bad blood, or at least this suspiciousness of doing business with China when it comes to American leaders. So I just think that uh, they are really, really in trouble there. RNG says there's nothing to see in a hurricane unless you want to live like you are in a washing machine. He says, I make my family leave 4 days before the storm hits. 100%. Remember the Northridge earthquake in California, huge earthquake in 1994, and having to go to Orange County to stay in a hotel. It was like there's nothing, no object is that valuable. Your lives are always and should always be more valuable. So we talked earlier about the vice president and Howard Stern, and one of the things he asked her, which I thought was an interesting question because you hear it all the time about people saying that they're going to leave if Donald Trump is elected. So Howard Stern asked the vice president if she would leave the country if Trump defeats her next month. Um, and Stern had noted during the chat that Trump has promised retribution against some of his political enemies. Trump shared a call for former Rep Liz Cheney. You know, Liz is supporting the vice president. This is in one instance. He says to be put through he wants her put through a televised military tribunal. And so Stern says, if he wins, God forbid, would you feel safe in this country? Would you stay in this country? And this is what the vice president had to say. She says, Howard, I'm doing everything I can to make sure he does not win. But what if he does? How can you be safe? He's saying, I'm just going to do whatever the heck I want. This time I know what I need to do, Howard Stern said. So the vice president says she is building a coalition with Republicans like Dick Cheney, Mitt Romney, and other Republicans who oppose Trump. But she did not, she did not uh, say whether she would leave the country or not. Um, but I thought it was a great question. I really wanted an answer to that question. Lauren Burke is watching. She says TikTok is doing the same as Instagram and Facebook. Why isn't Zuckerberg being sued? Exactly. Michelle Madison says the Chinese government doesn't allow their children to use TikTok. And as far as the question Howard Stern posed, David Youngblood says, I will absolutely pursue my option should that treasonous traitor win. And there are a lot of people who have said that. They're gone. There are people with dual citizenship. There are people with they're getting their passports, and they've made getting passports a lot easier now. You can get it online. And so that's why again, you know, these celebrities who jump on that crazy bandwagon of she ain't black. Again, it should not even matter. But like Janet Jackson, she lives in London, so keep your mouth shut, right? Y- You really don't have a stake, other than not. I mean, you really don't have a stake. You're good in London. Lot of other folks can't say that. They can't. So I wonder, and her body language. I'm not a body language expert. Her body language suggested to me that it might be an option for her and the second gentleman because and why it makes sense, as Howard Stern pointed out, and more importantly, as Donald Trump has made it clear, he is he is going after his political opponents, and his opponents in his mind are enemies. And he talked about a military tribunal. He's talked about, I mean, he's talking about hanging. You remember his mob? The greatest line, one of the greatest lines at the debate, at the vice presidential debate, was when Governor Walz talked about the fact that Trump wanted to hang Mike Pence. He said, "That's why you're here today." In other words, that's why Mike Pence is not here, because he wanted to kill the other guy who was his vice president. And Lauren Burke says TikTok is competing against Instagram, and magically Instagram is never questioned for doing the same thing. 100%. That's why I was thinking about that too, Lauren. I said the same thing. What's the difference? I mean, I'm not on TikTok a lot at all. I peruse it every now and again, and they got some great Prince videos on there. There's an account I follow that must be related, somehow connected to the Prince estate, because they put out some great stuff. But yeah, I don't see the difference. Now, I mean, I can be educated. My kids might be able to tell me the difference. I don't know if there's a difference, but I just think, Lauren, it comes down to the fact that it's a Chinese uh, company, and so and we know how America's very shining history of hating folks who don't look like them. So we experience it every single day, right? So there you have it. But yeah, the vice president's body language seems to suggest that is certainly a thought, certainly a consideration, and it should be, because this guy is serious. And just to think, that crazy Elon Musk jumping around that stage like an idiot, like the idiot that he is. Um, give me a break. You got some real hateful folks out there that are very powerful. They have a lot of money and a lot of time, and that's a dangerous combination. A lot of money and a lot of time on their hands. Orangey says he could barely work IG, and all of the wild adventures happened before the internet was created. All of his wild adventures happened before the internet was created. He says, "Thank goodness." Greer puts out a note, folks. Early voting, she says, has started. Early voting by mail and in person surged in the 2020 presidential election, driving a massive increase in overall turnout and helping Joseph R. Biden Jr. secure his victory. This year, we're tracking how the early vote will unfold without pandemic era restrictions and what it can tell us about the effects of new laws in some competitive states. So there you have it from the boss. He wants you to understand that has begun. Early voting has started. Um, my question remains, Lauren, if you're still there, is Trump, can he vote? Because so he can. Florida is his base now, is his home. Can he vote with the convictions? Because I don't think he can vote. which is interesting. David says, I can't wait to cast my early vote. I don't think Trump can vote. And how about him? The other thing with what the vice president was talking about too, this guy with the COVID kits, as we showed you earlier, sending COVID kits to Vladimir Putin, and you guys might remember, you should remember, I certainly remember where you couldn't get one, you couldn't get a test, and yet the guy who allowed so many people to die because of his inaction and conspiracy theories sends them out to a hateful dictator. According to the Florida Division of Elections, a felony conviction in another state makes person ineligible to vote in Florida only if the conviction would make the person ineligible to vote in the state where the person was convicted. So, and the New York law. Oh, could you put that back up, Greer? As I see the answer continues. Under New York law, a person convicted of a felony is disenfranchised only while incarcerated for that felony. Thus, Trump will be able to vote as long as he's not incarcerated for his New York felonies at the time of the election. So he will be able to vote because his sentencing is not until after the election. And any possible jail time won't start until after the election. Okay. And so there's the question up there. If Trump can vote, so long as he's not in prison, why are so many other Floridians with past convictions who are living in the community disenfranchised? There you go. It's a mad, mad, mad world, folks. Where'd you hear that before, right? It's a mad, mad world. Wow. Well, um, again, folks, we thank you so much for tuning in. We ask that you go ahead on our YouTube page, let it be known, LIBK-News. Hit subscribe and tell your aunties and your uncles to also subscribe and teach your grandparents how to subscribe too. It's important that we get the grandparents on there too. So teach them how to subscribe. And speaking of subscribe, I got to put another plug in. Amazon.com. Check out the transatlantic slave trade, 500 years. Think you'll like the book. I think you will like it. Chuck D wrote the foreword, and I think you'll like that too. So check it out, and check us out tomorrow. And Power 96, let's go Mets. We'll see you tomorrow.